Speaking podcast. I'm Chris Shelton, the critical thinker at large.
And I am Ruth McLeod, the Southern Atheist.
And this is our third episode. We're very happy to be doing this podcast and carrying the torch forward for sensible, skeptical, rational thought, about current news items, hot topic items, and things we just like talking about. Mm-hmm. And we hope that you agree with what we're doing here. And
we're not. That's fine.
And whether you agree with us or not is a whole nother thing. But we hope you enjoy the discussion here. So this week, if we want to open up, actually, before we get into the news part here, we just want to make some commentary on this wild man Trump and the Trump love that seems to be going on out there, because frankly, it has been something that has been boggling me. I've been watching this go across my Facebook feed and in the news and whatnot, and I don't pay probably as much attention to the news as maybe I should. On the other hand, maybe it's a good thing that I don't read a lot of the news.
I'm kind of with you. I'm boggled. 4 years ago when he decided to try to throw his hat in, it was a huge joke. It was like, look at Trump. Now he's like a legitimate candidate.
Exactly. It's similar to, and I don't know that you'll remember this or not, Ross Perot.
I remember lots of cartoons about Ross Perot and his ears.
Yes.
That's what I remember.
Well, Ross Perot was very similar to Trump in that he was a viable candidate who was a businessman, not a politician. Mm-hmm. He was a much more effective businessman than Trump is.
Yes.
Billionaire,
I remember he had a lot of money. Yes, I do remember that.
And he suddenly pulled out when things were looking like they were going in his direction. And there was a lot of conspiracy chat and that sort of thing at the time. And it really wasn't very clear why he did what he did. And I don't think we've reached that point yet in this year's campaigning where there's going to be a make-break and somebody's going to perhaps pull Trump aside and have a real actual talk with the guy about his viability as a candidate. But for now, it certainly is generating a lot of talk, a lot of media attention, a lot of sensationalism surrounding this. But we were talking about this, and we think that there might be something going on here that actually is worth remarking about, and that is the spirit, the ideas, actually, I think the word I want to use is the malaise surrounding the idea of politics and the American public. I think there's a huge feeling out there that people really can't do a lot about the government anymore. And the government certainly isn't doing a whole lot for them. I think that Trump is sort of shaking things up, and I think people have sort of given up on the idea that the government's really going to be there for them.
Like, it is such in a bad shape that there's really no reason to try to salvage it.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. I think, in fact, Barack Obama 8 years ago comes into office. Hope. Yeah. Change.
Right.
What happened?
A few things changed.
Well, there was change.
There was a couple. There are definitely some things that I'm disappointed in as a voting Democrat. So.
Right.
But yeah, I completely see it. But I used to have this conversation with friends of mine in college. They would say, I can't wait to graduate so I can move to London and get out of here. This place is crazy. And I would say, as bad as we are, I feel like I need to stay here to help fix it. And now I'm sad that there's this many people who are putting this clown in a front runner to be, the highest person in our country. I don't feel like this is fixing it. I feel like there's so many people who are just watching everything crumble, when if those people would just come together and try to work with one another. But of course, that's our problem, isn't it?
Well, that's exactly our problem. And I think we've been led down a path where, millennials and, maybe the last two generations have really given up on the concept of the American dream. And in fact, have been told bluntly that the American dream is dead.
Oh, no, yeah.
There is no American dream.
No. When I graduated college, I graduated very late from college. I graduated in 2011. Yeah, I know. The look on your face. That's later than I expected. I ratted around for about 10 years, traveling and doing things. I had this idea, okay, maybe I'll buy a house and, everything will be fine. I'll be able to buy a car and everything. No, I moved out here to Colorado, and I've been wanting to buy a house ever since. I can't do it. I don't make enough here to be able to put money aside for a down payment. I don't I can't get a loan for that amount. I can't do anything. I'm kind of stuck spinning my wheels.
Yeah, and I definitely see that too. I mean, since I've been out of the Scientology thing, which quite frankly did quite well at putting a roof over my head and putting clothes on my back and feeding me. I was, I would never go back to it, but it was certainly something that I never had to worry about all the problems of existence that so many other people do. And now that I've been out in the real world for a couple of years, it's been quite a learning experience,
I'm sure.
And I don't need any, Chris, wake up and, welcome to the real world and smell the coffee and all that. I am smelling the coffee.
Yeah. We all are.
I'm just commenting on the fact that I think this Trump phenomenon, if we want to call it that, is beyond a need of the American people for a new change. I think the group, the Trump supporters at least, and this is a really big subject, and we could spend the entire show talking about this, and we're not going to.
Yeah.
But, there's a whole section of, a majority of the American population are not liberal, are not...
Sadly.
Yeah, are not necessarily engaged in all the social forward progress that, the groups that you and I are connected with.
Mm-hmm.
And we see what we're doing as progress. They see it as infringing on their rights and their ability to have conservative Christian values and the things they were raised with, or the ideas that they have. And so they feel that that things are slipping out of their fingers, that things are slipping away, that it's all going to hell in a handbasket. And they, quite literally, they feel like it's going to hell.
Right. And
so this idea that Trump could come in and shake everything up, I think gives them the idea that, okay, this is, he's not the candidate we want, but...
it's the best we're going to get out of this situation.
That's right.
Right.
That's exactly right.
Right. And he kind of embodies the whole, I'm not going to be PC anymore, and people are kind of fed up with that. You and I were talking about that. Even I'm fed up with some PC stuff. He's kind of childish in that way, I think. He can be very bullheaded, and I think that people are actually admiring that, because they don't see it as a weakness. I don't see it as a very democratic way to do anything if you're going to have a person who is not open to having people suggest things to him. Mm-hmm. He doesn't seem like he's going to be a good team player with the other countries.
To say the least.
And the thing is, I think they think that that's a good thing. And that's incredibly upsetting to me.
Right.
I don't think that it's a good qualification to have someone in a leadership role who is incapable of compromise, who is incapable of working with other people, who is capable of just being an all-around decent person. I don't think he's capable of this.
Not to the degree that I think we need in terms of foreign relations, that's for sure.
Right.
If how he's talked about Mexico is any example of how he's going to...
He doesn't know how to connect with our immigration situation.
Right.
He doesn't know how to connect with women. He doesn't know how to connect with the average American. The man's been a billionaire for however long. He doesn't know how to be a common American anymore. And we're going to put this guy in power just because he happens to be different.
Right.
And I think that's a terrible, terrible way to do this.
I could not agree more. Unfortunately, you look at some of the alternatives and...
Well, it's got to be a sideshow. Like he has to be something that the GOP is using as, just let him clown around over here while the people in the backstage get ready for the real shit later.
One hopes that that's the case. I don't know that the GOP has things as under control as that. And that's what I'm a little bit afraid of.
I don't know. I don't down him. He's got to be a distraction.
I guess we will see shortly. See how this plays out. We're going to move on to our news section now. So in the news, we talked about the Duggars last week, and I think we have something that might provide a little bit of closure. Josh Duggar has now gone into some kind of a long-term rehab. And there's all kinds of conjecture about what that is and all that. We don't really care about any of that. Mm-mm. But there was a statement made on Facebook, actually. Mm-hmm. And Ruth found that.
It's from a mother in Georgia. Basically, she wrote an open letter to Anna Duggar, which is, of course, Josh's wife.
Mm-hmm.
There's been a lot of talk about what Anna is going to do. Is she going to leave? Is she going to take her kids? Is she going to stay? And I've kind of been pretty positive all along. Of course she's going to stay. Where's she going to go? And, you know, this woman who wrote this open letter, her name is Jessica Kirkland, and she says that she kind of was hearing everything about the Duggars situation, everything that's happened, and she sat down at her computer and wrote out this open letter to her, banged it out in about 2 minutes. And she's like, I didn't even really think a whole lot about it. What really got to me about her open letter was the part where she ended it saying that we really need to teach our daughters better. She says, quote, we must do better for our daughters. Girls have to command power for themselves. They aren't given it. They assume it and they take it. But you have to teach them to do it and that they can do it. We have to teach our daughters that they are not beholden to men like this, that they don't have to marry a man their father deems acceptable and then stay married to that man long, long after he has proven himself unacceptable. Educate them, empower them, give them tools they need to survive on their own if they must. Josh Duggar should be cowering in fear of Anna Duggar right now. Cowering. He isn't, but he should be. He should be quaking in fear that the house might fall down around him if he's in the same room as she. Please instill into your daughters with the resolve to make a man cower if he must. To say, I don't deserve this and my children don't deserve this. I wish someone had ever just once told Anna she was capable of this, that she knew she is. As for my girls, I'll raise them to think they can breathe fire. I thought that was fantastic. You know, you and I were talking about this. My own personal upbringing, my mother was a rock for me. But then she would take me to church where they would teach me to be submissive.
Mm-hmm.
And so I kind of had that weird dichotomy of a strong female role model, the church telling me that I have to be submissive.
Mm-hmm.
And so I really agreed with Jessica Kirkland's open letter about we really need to teach our girls. And it's not about teaching our girls that women are better than men, that they need to stomp all over them for no reason. We really need to get back to this level that we're equals. We're equals in politics. We're equal in media. We're equal in relationships.
And it's not even a matter of getting back to, because the fact of the matter is, it's never been there.
That's true.
And that is where we really need to get to.
Right.
And, you know, there's certainly a lot of discussion about this, and it should be talked about, you know, and this is on the same level of social issue as Black Lives Matter.
Yeah.
And you have the entrenched white privilege sort of view where it's like, oh, well, you know, does that mean that white lives don't matter and men don't matter and all that? And they're just taking it completely the wrong way.
Right.
And I actually had to get over that myself a little bit.
Oh, did you?
I did a little bit, yeah, because at first I was like, well, all lives matter. But after I read enough about this, and it didn't take long, I actually saw the point and it became crystal clear.
Right.
And suddenly all that white privilege just kind of went out the window and I was like, oh, I get it.
There was a meme somewhere that was like, rainforests matter. That's not saying that go fuck evergreens.
Exactly.
It's saying that, yeah, we need to focus on this because this is an actual issue.
Exactly the point. And you are missing the point if it's hashtag all lives matter as your response to Black Lives Matter. There is a point being missed there.
Yes.
And, you know, and in regards to the Duggars and Anna, women lives matter.
Right.
You know, and the equality is not just equal rights under the law.
Right.
It's equal rights in all aspects of the relationship.
And I just know someone's going to read that last paragraph that I just read or listen to it and say, well, why are we teaching women to be bossy, bitchy people? No. We're teaching them to be assertive. And that's not a negative thing.
Exactly. We need to be teaching men that it's not a negative thing.
Yeah.
Because women who have to live in fear of what men are going to do to them.
Right.
As a result of not wanting to go out on a date with them.
Right.
Not wanting to have sex with them. Not wanting to, even have a conversation with them.
Right.
That guys have got to get over the idea that they are owed something by women.
Yeah. And I've had plenty of female friends who have gone out on dates with guys because they didn't feel like they could say no. Not necessarily because they were afraid, but because they didn't know how to say no.
Right.
And they tell me these stories later, and I want to hold their hands and say, next time a guy asks you out and you don't want to go, call me. I'll tell him no. I have no problems with this.
The Just Say No campaign for dating. Yeah, exactly.
Let Ruth say no for you. Just, come on.
Right. So now we've got this other story we wanted to talk about here, and this is in regards to Kentucky. Kim Davis, the Rowan County clerk, has apparently decided that she is not issuing marriage licenses to same-sex couples because it violates her religious beliefs. All right, according to the story here from the Christian Science Monitor, her religious convictions, as well as those of other opponents of same-sex marriage, have become the center of the debate on which hinges the question, should one be forced to perform an action that is legally required but clashes with one's religious beliefs? Judge Bruning said issuing a marriage license does not impede Davis's freedom to believe what she wants. However, her religious convictions cannot excuse her from performing the duties that she took an oath to perform as Rowan County clerk, he wrote. Her lawyer compared forcing her to issue marriage licenses to same-sex couples was tantamount to requiring a nurse to perform abortions, a non-combatant to fire on an enemy soldier, or a state official to participate in executions against their will. And this woman has been in the county clerk business for 27 years. She began working for her mother, whose position she now holds, and her son now works for her. So this is a family affair for her.
Pretty much.
She's not letting this also be turned over to anybody else in the county clerk office, saying that if I, quote, if I say that I authorize that, I'm saying I agree with it and I can't. Now, one thing that I immediately noted in this story, which I definitely want to talk about here in terms of a bit of hypocrisy on this woman's part, she said her beliefs are formed by God's holy word, but the prosecution, when this was brought up to court, drew out a point that could be seen as a contradiction, and I certainly see it that way. Mm-hmm. Davis conceded that she does not treat divorce the way she treats same-sex marriage, though divorce is banned in many interpretations of the Bible. Davis herself has been divorced, remarried, and divorced again, and when asked if she would issue a marriage license to a person who has been divorced, she said, that's between them and God. So.
Well, of course she's going to let that one slide. It actually applies directly to her.
Interesting point.
Uh-huh. So, okay, she has until August 31st. That's when she was told to start issuing licenses. What they were doing that for was waiting for the appeal. Right. The appeal was denied yesterday, on Wednesday.
Okay.
So the actual gay couple one of the gay couples who was suing her, because it's two gay couples and two straight couples. Because for a while there, she decided to stop issuing marriage license to anyone.
All right.
So they went to the clerk's office today to try to get the marriage license signed. And again, this is the third time they were refused.
All right.
Saying the people in the office, the deputy clerks, are basically saying, we have until the 31st. Even though their appeal was shot down, they're still saying they have until the 31st.
All right. So this is just kind of going back and forth and whatnot.
Right. My biggest issue right now is they have argued this in court so much. They are now costing the Kentucky taxpayers $2.3 million in legal fees.
Wow.
And part of that was because the Attorney General, his name is Jack Conway, basically said, these laws likely will not service an appeal, and we cannot waste the resources of the Office of the Attorney General pursuing a case where we are unlikely to win. So the Attorney General has said, we're not going to win this. I'm not fighting this. So what they did, the Liberty Counsel, who is helping represent Kim Davis, they went to a private attorney's office. And so that's kind of bringing in the court fees as well.
I see.
The attorneys for the couples who are wanting to get married, the gay and straight couples who want to get married, who are doing the suing, they are being attacked at their home and in their office. Things are getting thrown at them.
By nameless, anonymous people in Kentucky.
Yeah. Attorney Dawn Elliott had a water bottle thrown at her. Attorney Laura Landenwich, at her home, received a crudely drawn religious anti-gay comic book where the cover had a picture of the Grim Reaper with his little skeleton hand waving, and the caption said, "Hi there." So obviously she was a little concerned about that.
So basically we have some native Kentucky people on the complete wrong side of history here, who are, trying to assert what they feel are their religious rights, which actually don't really exist.
They have every right to believe what they want to believe.
Of course they do. Those aren't the rights I'm referring to.
They have every right to believe what they want to.
Right. They don't have the right to enforce those beliefs in such a way as to prevent other people from living the life they want to lead.
Right. And it's Kim Davis has become the figurehead for this. There are other clerks who are part of this lawsuit as well, who are refusing to issue marriage licenses. She is under the impression that as an elected official, she still has the right to maintain her religious belief and have that affect the work that she does. She, as an elected official, has the right to her religion. Absolutely. Absolutely. She doesn't have to take it off when she goes to work. The problem is she is enforcing her religion onto her constituents. And they are basically telling these couples who are wanting to get married, telling them to go to different counties. Whereas their argument is, I live in Rowan County, I pay taxes here, there's no reason that I should have to cross county lines to go get a marriage license.
Right.
Especially when you are being told by multiple courts to issue them.
The bottom line on this, and we're really going to get down to brass tacks on it, is would we be having this conversation right now if Kim Davis had denied marriage licenses to a black couple coming in, or a Jewish couple coming in,
or an atheist,
or an atheist couple coming in, right? Would we be having this discussion right now?
I don't know.
We wouldn't, because she issues plenty of marriage licenses, I'm quite sure, to black couples and to Jewish couples.
And to people who have been divorced. She even said so.
That's right. So we have a singularity here, which is not equal rights under the law. And that's really the bottom line here. We can go back and forth on whether we agree or disagree on Kim Davis's religious beliefs. I don't care about her religious beliefs.
Right.
And the fact of the matter is she shouldn't either.
Right.
Not when it comes to executing her duties as a public officer.
But you have to think about the ramifications of this. If this woman wins somewhere along the way, where does that stop? Because it's one thing to have a baker, a photographer, refuse to do a service for a gay wedding. That is an absolute civil rights issue. But it's different that this woman is a public elected. What happens when laws start getting changed back to what they were 50 years ago?
Exactly. It is a civil rights issue it is important. It matters. It matters to everybody. And it's something that we should not be supporting this woman in what she's doing because it is very backwards thinking in terms of equal protection and equal rights under the law.
Right.
And that's the real point here.
She needs to come to terms with the fact that she thinks gay people are icky, because it's obviously not a biblical thing anymore. If she's picking and choosing what she's going to follow, she's only picking this because it has nothing to do with her and she finds it icky and uncomfortable.
And then that's a right she does not have as a public official in executing the duties of her office.
No.
All right. And we have another very interesting story here, which kind of immediately grabbed my attention for a couple reasons. And this is actually, this is an opinion piece. It was in Forward Progressives. The title is here, It's Time to Say It. Creationists aren't Christians. They're a cult. Now, of course, me with my cult background, this immediately grabbed my attention. And the other thing that grabbed my attention about this is it was written by Alan Clifton, who is a Christian.
Yes.
I am not reading this article out because I'm trying to be a bigot or because I'm trying to come down on people's religious beliefs as such. I'm reading this because this is an article by a Christian about other Christians, and it has the word cult in it, and I just got interested in this, so I'm going to throw this out there. He says, I think by now most who follow my writing, this is Alan Clifton, know that I'm not a fan of creationists. In fact, the more I speak with several of them, the more I think these people are suffering from severe mental illness. They'll literally say that all scientific data is, quote, just a theory, and that none of it is provable, yet they'll cling to the truths inside of the Bible because they view the Bible as some kind of factual history book. Except none of them were there to see any of it. You know, the same argument they use against a lot of proven scientific facts.
Perfect.
Heck, I've had several of them tell me that science is some giant corporate-sponsored conspiracy to keep scientists employed. Seriously, that's what many of them believe. The biggest problem I've seen with these people is that they simply don't understand what science is. And I'm just going to comment right now that that is absolutely what I see, almost one for one, with people who have run into or who have disagreements with or problems with something that science, articles about science or issues with sciences, they truly just do not understand it. And so they just bounce right off it. So getting back to this, when evolution is mentioned, they don't understand the complicated scientific research that's gone into the study of evolution to call it a scientific fact. When the age of the universe or Earth is talked about, they don't understand the science behind what brought scientists to these findings. To me, creationists aren't Christian. Though they might believe in God and Jesus, there's something entirely different. I see them more like a cult than a religion. A brainwashed grouping of people who reject all proven science for the sake of unrealistic beliefs. See, as a Christian, I believe God and science can coexist. Why isn't it feasible to believe God created everything to evolve into what it is today? Perhaps God knew the best way to make life was to create something and then let it shape itself over billions of years. The fact is, Christianity is a faith, not science. That's something creationists fail to understand. That's why creationism doesn't belong in a science class, because it's not science. Now, what I was interested in is that you were actually raised believing in
A literal Bible.
That's right. Mm-hmm. And you were raised to believe that creationism was actually a truth.
Absolutely. I was raised to believe that evolution and religion cannot coexist. It's not possible because the Bible is literal. 7 days, Noah's Ark, talking snake, talking donkeys, bears killing children, all of it. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I mean, we skipped over the bears killing children because you don't want to teach that to kids.
Right.
But no, absolutely. All of it was 100% literal.
So you were taught that the Bible is the Word of God and that it was literally dictated by God to the people who wrote the Bible, not divinely inspired, not parables, not nice stories that, were inspired by divine teachings. That it was word for word, that's what happened.
God showed up and in their head said, write these words.
Right.
Yes.
Okay. And this was when you were a child. I mean, we're talking about 8 years old here.
Yeah. Well, my mother started taking me to church as soon as I was big enough to fit in the car seat and be taken there.
Okay.
So I've always went to church from the time when I was born to when I was 18.
Right.
3 times a week.
I've said in videos that I've made and whatnot that belief is a choice. And I do believe that, but when I say things like that, I'm talking about adults.
Yeah.
When you're raising a child with a belief system and are never giving that child a choice as to what to believe or not to believe, or presenting it to him as though, well, this is one way of thinking. There is no choice being made there. And that seemed to me that was a fairly common sense thing to think from what I was saying, but some people have taken me a little literally on that.
No. For most religions, you have to teach the kids early some of this nonsense. It's the only way we're going to buy it.
Now, what I was interested in, what we were talking about, is that you actually ran into a point when you were still young, 8 years old or something, where you started questioning this. And that's what got me thinking, well, how did that happen?
Like I said, I went to church 3 times a week, vacation Bible school, Bible camp, summer camp, all of it. My church sent me to a church camp. I was there for a week. And one of the last classes that I took there, this guy taught us about how in the book of Job had a dinosaur in his backyard. It's actually described as a behemoth, long neck, on and on. But if you read it without any kind of background knowledge or anything, it kind of sounds a little bit like a dinosaur.
Okay. Job had a dinosaur.
Job had a dinosaur in his backyard. Awesome. So I was taught that literally that same day. We went from the camp, went home, and it was Sunday. So, of course, we had to go to church that night.
All right.
So, Sunday night, because I'd had church Sunday morning at camp, Mom picked us up, brought us home. Oh, Sunday night, time to go to church.
Yeah.
So I'm in Sunday night Bible class. The teacher happened to be talking about Job.
Really?
Mm-hmm. And so she asked, who here knows what happened to Job? What's the big story about Job? My hand shot in the air. I knew this answer. My 8-year-old self knew this answer. I was thrilled I knew this answer. And I said, he had a dinosaur in his backyard. Silence.
Really? You could hear a pin drop.
Silence. And then it started. The giggles just started around the class. And the teacher, the Sunday school teacher, who actually happened to be my preacher's wife, kind of looked at me and went, no. And I didn't know what to do at that point. And I remember going home and like telling my mom what happened. And she goes, well, honey, the Bible's literal, but sometimes people interpret it differently. And that whoever taught you that about the dinosaur interpreted it wrong. Blew my mind.
So enters the cognitive dissonance.
Yeah.
Oh my God, two opposing ideas.
Same
what
day.
What do I do with this? So how did that then, so you had, that's for real, you actually had some dissonance going on there.
Yeah.
So how did that evolve over time? Like then what happened as you continued going to school?
After I had my tantrum when I was 8 about it, I was very upset. I was basically taught to just kind of go along with things. This is the way it is. Whatever you're taught outside isn't always correct.
Outside of church.
Outside of church.
Including what you were taught at the Bible camp.
Yes.
Okay.
Even though they sent me there.
Right.
They had a rogue teacher, something. I don't know what their justification was for that. And I told you I would admit this. Mm-hmm. And I'm really trying to make up for this. In the 7th grade in middle school.
Yes.
My middle school science class, our science teacher that year, Miss Robinson. I don't know why I remember her name. She was brand new out of school. This was her first year teaching. And bless her heart, she went straight to middle school. I don't know what possessed her. But we heard that she was going to teach us about evolution. And I had a bad influence friend next to me at the time. And she basically said, I know a way of how to get out of class. We'll go to our teacher and tell her that it's against our religion to learn about evolution. And so I said, you know what? I want to roam the halls during class. I'll totally use my religion as a way to get out of learning evolution because it's not true anyway.
Right.
So we went up to her and we started to make a stink about it. And so she canceled evolution class for the entire 7th grade science group. I prevented everyone in my class from learning about evolution that year. And I actually have felt horrible about it since.
Well, true confessions aside, I wanted to talk about this because of the fact that I've been talking to some people lately who actually don't believe that this sort of thing goes on. And that schools are not, that there is no school in the United States that actually is this backwards when it comes to actual science classes.
Well, as someone who went to public school in the South, let's talk about it because it's totally there.
Well, and that's what fascinated me.
I'm living proof I did it, and I've been very upset at myself ever since.
You are listening to the Sensibly Speaking podcast. Isn't it about time someone made some sense around here? How did you evolve into evolution?
Towards the end of my senior year, I basically had about enough of my religion at that point for a plethora of reasons. And I finally learned about this concept of being religious and believing in evolution at the same time. That was not something that I correlated together at all my entire life. And even when I say I was a senior, I mean a senior in high school. And I say that it started to come to me But at the same time, I thought that it was lying a little. You have to be lying about something, because I used to think that you are either all in your religion or you're all out. There's no tiptoeing around it. And I still kind of believe that way. I don't think that you should tiptoe around certain things in your religion if you are a religious person. I don't think that you should be able to cherry pick. I think that's incredibly dishonest of a religious person to do.
And yet it's what the vast majority, I will simply assert, with, no real reason to other than I feel that this is true.
Right.
From the, thousands of comments that I've read, and stories that I've read in the last couple of years coming out of Scientology and reading and learning about religions and whatnot, that the vast majority of people cherry pick their religious beliefs based on what makes them feel good, what they were raised with, and what they can accept, and how they meld their science education or their college education with their religious upbringing or their chosen religious beliefs. Mm-hmm. It's not surprising to me at all that you, having come up and raised with a literal interpretation, right? In fact, according to this article, and this is actually right along the lines of what I know all about, is, you were raised in a cult-like environment where it's all in, right? Right. And I'm not saying you were part of a destructive cult. That's not what I'm saying. Right. But you are. I think we could agree that you had a rather extreme belief system.
Right. I mean, we had the Watchmaker Argument. Not everybody's really familiar with that one, but it's one of those. I was taught that, people who believe in the Big Bang Theory think that I could just take all the intricate pieces of a fine watch, just the individual pieces, put them in a box and shake it around, and it would eventually become a watch again.
That's the watchmaker fallacy.
That's the watchmaker, yeah.
So, and that's the Christian point of view, the fundamentalist point of view, saying why the Big Bang
can't be real.
Can't be real.
Right. Okay. I mean, because they would say, you have an art piece, it has to have an artist. You have a building, there has to be a designer. You have a human being, there has to be a supreme being who put it here.
Right. It's the prime mover argument. There must be that.
Right. And it was actually, I kind of had this inner argument with myself about people who are religious accepting evolution. And like I just said, I still struggle with it. One of my professors in college, I feel like I was extremely lucky to have her as a professor. Some people might know her. Her name is Dr. Barbara Forrest, and she was one of the key expert witnesses on the Dover trials that happened in the 90s. The Dover trials is where they were trying to bring in intelligent design into the classroom as an alternative theory to evolution.
So this was sort of the Scopes Monkey trial, the sequel.
Basically.
Okay.
They just, instead of calling it creation, they called it intelligent design.
Right.
She did a lot of work into it, and she's basically kind of spoken about it ever since. She has a great book called Intelligent Design, Creationism's Trojan Horse. But she was my professor in college. She is a philosophy professor, and I took her for critical thinking. She has a friend that she kind of beat it into our heads about him. He is a biology professor at Brown University. His name is Kenneth Miller. He's a biologist. He speaks about evolution. He's an evolutionary biologist. He's also a very devout Catholic. And he makes the argument in so many different ways about how the two, religion and evolution, can coexist. And so whenever somebody would try to bring up, you're religious, so you can't believe in science and evolution, she would just harp on us to not allow that thought into our head. So I'm still struggling with it, Dr. Forrest, but I am trying very, very hard to justify it in my head, because I grew up with the literal virgin.
Right.
Version, not virgin.
You grew up with a literal virgin.
With the Virgin Mary, damn it. No, I grew up with the literal version of the Bible, so it's hard for me to be able to accept that if someone is true to their religion, they'll allow this amendment almost.
Right.
So,
well, it's interesting because according to what Hemant Mata was telling us when he came around a couple weeks ago, and some things I've been looking at, the compatibility of science and religion This doesn't work. It only works in a non-literal interpretation of the Bible, where you take the Bible and you go, look, this is parables, this is moral tales, this is not, the snake really talked to the woman, that's not what happened. And of course, that's always how I viewed the Bible, from a non-religious upbringing, well, at least a non-Christian upbringing, non-Catholic upbringing. I always looked at the Bible as literature or as morality tales, But this is one of the reasons why people are leaving religion, is where they are part of a religion which enforces a literal interpretation or is asserting over and hard that science is a bunch of BS. Science doesn't know what they're talking about. It's intelligent design, it's creationism, and people are voting with their feet.
Oh, yes.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
And so now, where the church rejects science and isn't keeping up with that, you have people, taken off.
Right.
So, and you're
I'm a prime example.
Exactly.
Yeah. And kind of researching this a little bit, I found a Pew Research study from 2013 that says 33% of Americans reject the evolution theory entirely. 24% believe that evolution happened via a supreme being. So that actually kind of, I don't know if I want to say it made me feel better that it's such low numbers. But it kind of surprised me that, these types of percentages are out there. The most likely to reject evolution in its entirety are white evangelical Protestants, which does not surprise me.
Not at all.
One bit at all. I think one of the reasons that it was beaten into my particular religion's head that the Bible is literal, especially for children. We need to teach children that the Bible is literal. Because we're given so many stories growing up. I mean, Easter Bunny, Tooth Fairy, Santa Claus. This has to be real. Or else we'd go, oh, well, that's just a metaphor too. And we can eventually throw it out because it's not real. So that's random thought in my head that I had just now.
Right. Well, it is certainly the case that people are becoming more and more aware. We're becoming, more and more knowledgeable about what options are available to them out there. Right. We're not in the Middle Ages anymore.
The internet is super helpful to this right now. And again, like you said, Hemant Mehta mentioned this. Yep. People are able to turn to the internet more easily and it's more readily available to them than it is to be able to go to the church. Because when I had my questions and when I posed my arguments kind of without going into a completely another story, when I would say things that were contradictory to what I was being told and taught, there was no outlet for me to be able to go and ask someone within my church these questions. And I wonder now if I was able to go and talk to one of the elders or the deacons or a mentor or something within my church, would they have been able to placate some of my internal disruption? Would they have been able to talk with me and get me on their perceived correct path for me? I mean, they wanted to marry me off to an elder son. Wow. That's not even kidding right now.
No, I get it. It totally makes sense in that context.
Right. That was their way of trying to fix it, I think.
Right.
But if they had actually sat down and spoken with me about these and answered my questions, would I be here? I don't know.
Yeah, it's hard to say.
I don't know.
Because alternatively, some people have gone to their preachers or gone to their ministers for answers and have been even more turned off by the dogmatic enforcement of scripture and literal interpretation. And then, this is the internet age now. This is the information age. They go home.
Yeah.
They Google it.
Yeah.
And what do they find? They find different theories, different ideas about things than what are in the Bible. And some of them are quite plausible. Anyway, so they go home and they Google it and they find alternative answers to their questions. And some of those answers end up turning them away, maybe from the organized religion aspect of things. But, I don't know that it's but they still hold on to their Christian faith, their faith in Jesus, their faith in an afterlife, that sort of thing, their faith in God. And I don't have any argument with that. I got zero argument with that,
Yeah, I still have an argument with that.
I understand.
Right.
But I wanted to be clear about that because it's not the belief that's at issue. It's enforcement of belief on others who don't have those beliefs where things get ugly.
Right.
And that we definitely agree on.
Right. And, it kind of ties a little bit back into the whole Kim Davis, Kentucky conversation that we had. If you have your beliefs, beautiful. That's fantastic. The thing is, when you are in a position of power over other people, like teachers, judges, politicians, all of this, you're in this power position. How would you feel if someone was a completely different religion than you, right, pushing their religion on you,
right,
or your children, or your family? You don't want it. That's why we need to have the separation of church and state.
Exactly.
And and I kind of want to ask you a question.
Yeah.
As a Scientologist, or as a former Scientologist, excuse me,
mm-hmm.
what is the Scientology stance on evolution? Is there a controversy there?
In the early works of Dianetics and Scientology in the 1950s, Hubbard supported evolution and the concept of evolution, and the quote-unquote research he was doing seemed to support the idea of evolution, in that, people had evolved from lower life forms up to higher life forms, etc. Then in the mid-60s, he was giving a lecture where he said, yeah, no, not so much. Thousands and millions of years ago, we were all, as spiritual beings or as spiritual entities,
right,
we were all put in a condition where we thought that we weren't spiritual entities and we were actually bodies. And we had to have a body in order to live. And so part of the process of doing that was convincing everybody through these implants, which is kind of like spiritual brainwashing, that bodies had evolved, when in fact the bodies were just created at whole. And he doesn't really get into too much of what actually happened. He just says that. And there's enough logical inconsistencies in there. Swiss cheese, it doesn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah, because that brought in like 17 more questions.
Of course
I'm
it
not gonna lie.
No, absolutely it does. There's oh my God, the Scientology mythology just goes on and on and on.
And I never really thought about that question from a Scientology point of view until this afternoon.
Yeah.
Because, you had mentioned, I'd love to hear a little bit more about how your evolution process came about and my education came about. And then I was thinking, wait, Chris, you were a teen when you joined Scientology. So you knew about evolution, am I correct? Yeah. So, and I was incredibly curious about did you have a struggle with that in Scientology, or was it just kind of like, oh, well, yeah, sure, of course, that makes sense?
It's not really, and the thing is, in Scientology, it's not really, stuff like this isn't talked about a lot.
Okay.
It's covered in some of the early books of Dianetics and Scientology, and then you kind of get the idea that, oh yeah, evolution and all that, and it's all compatible and all makes a lot of sense. And then you hit this lecture, which not everybody in Scientology even knows about, where you find out, oh yeah, no, none of that actually happened. And then you just kind of have to do this, this mental gymnastics to make it all make sense.
Okay.
And you don't think about it too much after that. And that's kind of the Scientology solution to a lot of things.
Would you call that cognitive dissonance then?
Yeah, that is exactly what it is. Okay. And what it does is it creates cognitive dissonance, and then the solution to the dissonance is, I'm just not going to think about this.
Well, that sounds like a good Southern white people way of dealing with stuff too.
It's far from unique to Scientologists.
It's outside of what we're doing within our home. Don't talk about it.
Right.
It's unpleasant. Don't talk about it.
Exactly. And
definitely. Okay.
And so, if you sat down with a Scientologist, it would depend on how much they had read of Hubbard's work to know, all the things I just told you about.
Okay.
But for the most part, they just don't really think about it too much.
As a sidebar, though, your index of information on Scientology is quite impressive.
Thank you. Well, 27 years, man.
Yeah, I just gotta mention that one in there.
Sure.
All right.
So now it is time to move on to the next segment.
What are you talking about? What are you talking about?
The topic for today is, at what point does belief become harmful? And this is a topic that I wanted to talk about, not because I have fully formed ideas and conclusions about this, but in fact is something that I'm still working out for myself as to the role of religion, religious belief, and of course my own background in a destructive cult, and how some of those beliefs certainly seemed harmful in that not the belief themselves, but the actions and consequences of those beliefs. And I've sort of tried to maintain an idea since I've been looking into all of this stuff and making progress as a critical thinker. I've tried to differentiate the concept of personal belief and what people do with those beliefs. And I'm starting to wonder how inseparable those actually are. Depending on who I've talked to or various comments that I've had on my channel, certainly people have made it clear to me that they are not separable and that belief has consequences and belief drives action. And of course, I am no stranger to that and so totally see that. But I also have this idea that we should tolerate other people's beliefs and that there should be freedom of speech and freedom of belief. Mm-hmm. Such tolerance is impossible if you don't let people believe what they want. So where do you draw a line, and where do you decide that a belief is now a harmful thing for a person to have? Well, I've tried to maintain the idea that it's not the belief, it's the actions that people take that can be regulated. And I'm still examining that as an idea. It's not a total conclusion with me yet that it must be this way. I'm very, very open to looking more at this, and so I thought it might be an interesting discussion topic. Some of what I've said on my channel or in some of my articles might be construed as anti-religion, anti-belief, attacking people's beliefs. And I
tell me about it.
And I really, I just it rubs me such the wrong way because it's so not where I'm at.
Right.
And yet I have to be responsible for the words that I choose and the way I choose to communicate my ideas. And so I thought this might be something interesting to talk about. When does it become harmful? So what are your initial thoughts on this?
The first couple of things that pop out to me as things that I have seen in myself and my own experiences as harmful, things that I've been seeing recently on news and different articles and things that I've been reading that are harmful. I see anything that stops free thought. Anything that intellectually stunts you. Anything that is stopping a person's independence, where they need to rely on their religion. They can do nothing without it, which unfortunately, in my case, just cuts out almost all religions.
Well, that's very interesting because, of course, that was exactly the experience you had, and yet you look at other religions, and
right.
And they're not that way.
Right. The last one that I wrote down, anything that's disrupting your health or not allowing you to get real help.
Right.
We were talking about this earlier, the John Oliver Weekend Tonight video.
Televangelism.
Yeah, the televangelism, where they're saying, even if you only have $1,000 and you're trying to save up for something, you can't spend any money with just you can't buy anything with just $1,000 anyway. Right. So just send it to me.
Right. Or Gloria Copeland going out saying that cancer is better healed through prayer.
Yes.
And send that money, don't get that cancer treatment. Don't spend that money on that.
Right.
Send your money to us.
Right.
And we'll pray the cancer away.
Women or men who are in domestic abuse situations and they're told to stick with their spouse. And I say women or men because I know men are just as capable of being abused as women are. And we happen to hear more about it from women, and women are more likely to be told within the church to stay with their husbands.
Right.
Or stay with their partner who's hurting them.
Exactly, which is completely off the rails.
Right.
And these are all very valid points, and these do all spring from belief. Mm-hmm. And of course, nothing infuriates me more than the actions of destructive cults, because of my background, and I'm very familiar with, seeing it in action. You see it way in far more groups than just Scientology, where people are taken advantage of, people, not just, financially, their entire lives, given over to something, right? Mm-hmm. And I think your first point actually was a very valid one, which is
stopping free thought.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. And I think that is exactly where it, as a critical thinker, as somebody who's embraced critical thinking and skepticism, that we have to take a stand at some point, and we have to go, look, this is this belief system maybe isn't so conducive to free thought,
right,
or free thinking, or we've been talking for the last couple of weeks about the Duggars,
right.
Perfect example of what we've been talking of this exact thing, where Anna is in a situation where she doesn't feel like or know that she can have other options. She doesn't even occur to her that she has other options.
Right. No, it's not going to.
And that's a destructive belief system.
Right.
What else? What other words do you use for it?
When I was jotting these down, and then of course when I repeated them to you, I kind of was concerned that they're very broad. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to say that every religion is harmful because they all do this.
No, because all religions do not do this.
Absolutely not. Some of them, unfortunately, do. Right. And that I am an atheist. I'm not religious. I'm not anti-religion. I definitely see how religion is helpful to many, many people. Mm-hmm. Do I think it's the best way to help people? Probably not. Mm-hmm. Even my own family members have their religious beliefs, and they have told me they can't do it without their religion. And do I find that kind of sad? Yeah, of course. But not in the sad as in, oh, you pathetic thing. I find it sad that they're kind of stuck there. I feel like they're stuck there.
Right.
And I feel like I've moved past that. And I'm able to live my life knowing that there's not something that is constantly hovering over me, making sure I'm doing good.
When you're denying people access to information.
Yes.
When you're denying people rights.
Yes.
That they are afforded under the law.
Right.
Of the land.
Right.
Right. But they suddenly don't have those rights anymore because of a belief. I might have a problem with that.
Right.
It's not to deny people the right to believe whatever they want. I'm
concerned that I'm coming off harsh on religion. And I just want to reiterate, that's not what I'm doing.
Well, I think as an atheist, you're one of the most liberal and unharsh atheists I've ever heard.
I know,
mean, to go talk to Dawkins, and it's
I know many atheists who are absolutely in favor of getting rid of every religion. I know and love dearly many of them. Maybe it's because I have a religious background. Maybe it's because I actually had a very good experience with my family growing up. I still have very good connections with most of my family. I've got a very religious aunt who just doesn't talk to me at reunions, and that's fine. Right. I wouldn't want to talk to her anyway. I don't want to be too hard sounding on religion, but at the same time, I definitely see these problems, especially in the religion that I grew up in. I see them stopping people from having their own thought process about things. I see them stopping people from being independent outside of the church. I see them telling people to pray instead of seeking help. And that is that's petrifying to me.
Right.
It's sad, it's terrible, and it's not the way a church is supposed to be.
Exactly. And I think what we're seeing now in all the surveys and various things that we look at and the way the culture is going, we still have a long way to go. Mm-hmm. But I think we're seeing progress in the right direction. And even with this article that we read from Alan Clifton, where he's a Christian talking about extremist Christians, creationists, the comment section of that blog article had some wonderful comments in it from people who said, yeah, I'm a Christian, and these creationists are nuts. I believe in science. I don't hate gays. I don't think that we're living in a, medieval society anymore. Right. And I think we're seeing more and more of a move in that direction of freedom of thought, freedom of speech, and an ability to think with all of the information we have available to us now and not a very limited subset of it. And that gives me a lot of hope.
Oh, yeah. I see this article, the Clifton article, kind of on the same lines of some religious people see the flat earth movement, the flat earth society. It's kind of like, really?
Right. Right. You're literally in the Middle Ages.
Yeah. Come on.
Literally.
Come on.
Yeah. No moon landing and all this sort of thing. So fortunately, that when you get into that, it sounds very interesting and very nutty, but it's also extremely fringe.
Right.
And we're talking about a couple hundred people.
Oh, yeah, no, I know. I was making a correlation.
Totally. No, totally.
No, I absolutely believe that these are not a majority of people, and they're not going to change our opinions or anything like that.
No.
These flat Earth people.
No, not at all.
I hope that they see the same correlation between laughing at this middle-age idea and scoffing at this thing this theory that has so much science behind it.
Fair enough.
But I'm with you. I'm definitely with you. I see hope in some places.
I do too, and of course I'm the hopeless optimist. So of course I'm going to do that because that's just how I am.
Maybe that should be my tagline instead of Southern atheist. Maybe I should be the hopeful atheist or the optimistic atheist.
Fair enough. All right. Well, with that, we are going to wrap up this week's episode. This has been a very interesting and a lot of fun to do.
Mm-hmm.
As always, I want to encourage anybody out there to send us your comments, send us your feedback. We're very interested in what you have to say, and whether you think we're doing it right or wrong here, or what you got on your mind when you listen to us.
Yeah.
We want to hear. And we're also very interested in anything that you want to hear us discuss or talk about.
Absolutely.
Received a couple comments on that line, and we are forming a little list of things that we're looking into, and we try to educate ourselves a bit before we just go rambling on into
I'm definitely guilty of that. So I came prepared this time. I had my papers this time. I was prepared.
Doing the Rush Limbaugh there, yeah. So anyway, we're enjoying the hell out of this. We're going to keep going, and we hope you are too. And we will see you next week.
Good night.